Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Morning Coffee with Caryn. Hello. This is episode 34. So thank you so much for being here. I know we are all busy spending some time with our families today for Easter. Many of us. I know there's also plenty of you who don't celebrate Easter. So maybe you celebrated Ostara closer to the spring equinox, or perhaps you're just not into the commercialism at all in the Hallmark level that the Easter Bunny brings. I honestly have a ton of fun watching my kids do that. I also buy a little bit of candy, and we never have candy, so it's a super special treat. But besides that, nothing too exciting. This live stream today is all about the resurrection of you. And what I love about this live is that we are really going to be diving in to this idea of the Christ as a frequency, and Jesus or Yeshua as just a man who was able to reach the fullness of knowing his worth as an aspect of the Creator in physical form, and that the Christ itself is really just a frequency, a vibrational state that we all are capable of reaching. Let's see. So who here has read any of the following books? Either The Disappearance of the Universe, The Book of Knowing and Worth, or Sophia, the Sophia Code? Any of those three books. I will be referencing all three of them throughout the course of this. I will leave the names of them. I'll edit the description for that. So the first thing that, like I said, I really want us to understand is that as we are celebrating the resurrection of Jesus today, we have to recognize that it wasn't really his body that was resurrecting, right? His actual physical human form that we all remember him as was just the one that he was able to reach his enlightenment at. He was able to reach his Buddha level, his Bodhi level, his true enlightenment. And that's not to say that his soul, just like all of our souls, hadn't incarnated on this planet many, 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 many times before. And just by the time he had incarnated in the form of Yeshua or Jesus Christ, Jesus, I honestly say JC. It's just easier for me, and it makes him more relatable as someone who was raised Catholic and had a stint in the Mormon church. Just to recognize that he really was just a man like the rest of us who was able to attain that level of knowing his worth. And what it really means to know your worth, it comes from the book of Knowing and Worth. So that's why I'm saying this, is that when you know your worth, you recognize that your worth really is truly the manifestation of God in as man. That's it. Your worth, when someone says, oh, Instagram, you're falling again. I'm telling you guys, this situation is killing me. Let's see if I do that, if it helps. Oh, I should have been doing that all along. Sorry, y'all. Seriously, if you guys could see the setup that I have to be able to go live in all the places and record it for the YouTube later in the podcast, you would die of laughter. So that's it. To know your worth. When someone says, charge your worth, and do you know that you're worthy, or any of those things, they're really saying, do you really know and have that knowing deep in your bones? Not, you guys know how I've talked about it before, not just an understanding, but a knowing in your bones that you are a manifestation of God as man or woman, as human, as living in existence on this earth, right? So when I talk about the resurrection of you, it's really going from this world of being so fearful and constantly looking to the external and turning inwards and recognizing that you have the capacity to vibrate at the Christ frequency, at this level of attainment, of knowing that you are a God in manifestation, choosing exactly how you're going to live your life. So every moment of your life, you are choosing whether or not you are going to stay in a low frequency, or if you're going to relearn the habits necessary and redirect so that you can vibrate at a higher frequency. When JC talks about in the Gospel of Thomas, which is a Gnostic gospel, it's not like not in the New Testament, not in your regular version of the Bible. He talks about, there's a phrase in there where he's saying, when you know your body, you actually can live and you can transcend death, essentially. And what he's talking about is understanding that the mind, body, spirit that we try to hold so much in balance here in human form is really the mind, or in the Kabbalion known as the all, that is fractaling. Either you are all with the all, as in you are one with God in the kingdom of heaven, as the Christians would say, or you are in body and you are here in separation and samsara, in the illusion. Okay. Do you guys love how this is like, this is what you always get from me every Sunday, like a little bit of Christian, a little bit of Buddhist, a little bit of Gnostic, a little bit of alchemy and Hermeticism. Like we go all over the place. Hey everyone, hey Sarah. And we have this ability, the mind is either in the one with the kingdom of heaven, completely divine will, just like in the cosmic soup, as it might be, like your greater self, all of that, that is being in pure oneness with your mind and pure oneness with spirit. When the mind is focused into the body, into man, we forget, because that's the game that we decided to play, we forget that our worth is that we are God in physical man. We get everything. We are already perfect as we are. We are already whole as we are. We are currently fully an aspect of God. But we're not the fullness of God, the fullness of spirit, the fullness of your greater self, until you reach that level of recognizing that there really is no separation. And this is what Jesus Christ was really all about. It's so fascinating to me, honestly, how many Christians want the status quo to stay the same, when really that status quo didn't happen until about 400 years after Jesus was alive, during the rule of St. Augustine, when there was like massive book burning, like literally Hitler and St. Augustine could like get along with each other. Not St. Augustine, Pope Augustine, where they just burned everything, right? Like just got rid of all the Gnostic texts, got rid of anything that wasn't what the church was saying. But that was 400 years after the man that we know as Jesus Christ, or as I will refer to him, JC, in like, that was 400 years later in linear time. So a lot of what we know about Jesus now is actually based on scrolls that we were able to find. You hear about the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you hear about other scrolls of papyrus and the Gospel of Thomas, which I've already mentioned, and other things where we're able to glean a little bit more of what life was really like at 0 AD. And through like 33 or 34 AD, right? Because Jesus was 33 when he was crucified. And I think that's the reason why I've been connecting so much to him, is my husband, like if you ever looked at him, he looks a lot like Jesus. He's going to be 33 this year, and I'm going to be 32. So it's like I'm starting to become the age of some of these people that I really look up to when they died, and just learning the lessons that I can so I can move forward through it, right? So let's go back to this idea that JC was really just the fullness of the manifestation of this Christ frequency, and that we are all capable of vibrating at that same level. So one of the dragons that you can call upon for this, because of course I want to talk about dragons, is there's a few of them. There is the gold and white dragon from Lyra or Lyria, whichever one. So if you've ever connected to the star beings from Lyra or the Lyrans, Lyra, the white and gold dragons from there they resonate that ninth dimensional Christ frequency, and you can actually go and meditate with them and dip yourself in this pool of Christed light. It's really beautiful. I am going to be recording a series of meditations that have been coming through to help people during this time of goo, as I like to refer to it, the time when all of us caterpillars are all cocooned all up in there, and we're not just like, I don't know if you don't know this, caterpillars turn to complete and total goo when they're inside of a cocoon, like just squashy, like nothing. It doesn't, there's not like an eyeball left, nothing. It just turns to total goo and then reformulates into this butterfly. And we're all going to come out of our houses here in June, and we're just going to be these beautiful, amazing butterflies. And that's because we have this opportunity to learn some of these things instead of just going through our week and then showing up to church on Sunday and like getting a little bit of, doing our Hail Marys and then getting out. We're really having an opportunity to understand that like the mind is really what is creating everything. Our unconscious thoughts rule 95% of our lives until we understand that that's what's happening, and we being more and more of our unconscious conscious. Okay. I'm going to take a sip of my drink. Let me know if this is landing for you. Please make sure you like and share this out to your friends. This is like a really powerful, when I was writing my note, I never take notes, okay? I don't take notes when I come into these things. I send the topic to my VA, she makes the awesome graphic, and then I just wing it. But this one was very like, it's Easter. We need to tell the people the truth about JC, okay? So, the Christ frequency really wants to be known as you. So it's not you as Christ, it's the Christ as you. So the frequency of how your original song, so you guys know I love singing, you know that I'm all about frequency and fingerprints being totally unique. So is your vocal cords. No one has the same voice as you. If you have someone speak into a machine and it resonates, you would never ever get the same pattern of how their inflection is or the tone or anything like that. Sorry, I just gotta. My daughter's trying to take her nap and her room is right up below ours. So I gotta push something over the vent. So the frequency, this ninth dimensional frequency of Christ, this frequency of the word, okay? In the Gospel of John, we hear the very first line, in the beginning of the word, in the beginning there was the word, and the word was God, right? He's really talking about Jesus Christ when he says that. It's not, or the writer of the Gospel of John is really referring to Jesus Christ and not to the great I am. Although we are all one and the same. That is really talking about how JC, Yeshua, Christ, is the word, as in logos. Logos in Latin is, that logical, it's the mind. And in Hermetic principles, so alchemy and magic, when you hear logos, it really means like all life is what, let me just make sure I have it written down here. All reality. Jesus is the word, and in Latin, the word is logos, and the Hermetic meaning of logos is of all reality. So really, Christ is the word of reality. So when you again recognize that famous Napoleon Hill saying that your thoughts are things, you recognize that your thoughts, your vibration of your thoughts, are what is the truth that you're living. It's not my truth. It's not your truth. It's the truth of the frequency that you're projecting out into this fractal holographic universe. Because we are all just fractals of God. And we are creating and manifesting in form our own unique frequency, our own unique song. Again, we are a singing crystal. We are the ones who are creating every moment of our life. And we can choose, again, Christ chose to be a total heretic and still was able to reach this state of nirvana, okay? Was able to rise above his mortal form and still project his mind past his physical body being deceased. That is what the resurrection truly is about, is you no longer associating who you are with this physical meat sack, but you instead associate who you are with the mind, or with the all, or with God, or with spirit, or whatever word works for you. It's why in the Autobiography of a Yogi, there are multiple times that Paramahansa Yogananda talks about how masters that he knew chose like the exact moment that they were going to leave. And some of them like shape shifted into hummingbirds, and others just like literally told him years and years before, like, this is where you can find me. This is how I will have died. All of these things. It's all the same process that Jesus went through. We have to remember that JC was of the Middle East, much more Eastern influence than all of this Western Roman stuff, and a lot of the paganism that got pushed in. Like, Easter really comes from the word Ostara, which is the pagan holiday for the middle of spring. So like what we call the first day of spring is anyone who plants a garden anywhere near where Ireland or Europe is knows that it's really like closer to mid-spring. Like you start doing your planting in the like middle of February. So again, let's come back to the resurrection of you. This is your time right now to be able to look at the thoughts and look at the results in your life. Look at your current circumstances. And what do you want them to be instead? The only way that you can change your circumstances is to be focused on a different result, right? Einstein says the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and again, expecting different results. The problem is that most of us don't expect different results. We just like reach 30 years old and our life just is the way it is. And that's our isness. Our isness is like the isness of global shadow consciousness and what the world has been projecting in this patriarchal, non-creative, very logical world, instead of the isness that is our unique frequency, our own unique essence of the Christ as us. Okay. Give me some hearts, some likes, some comments. I love loves. I love likes. I love comments. This one's a really heavy one, so I just want to make sure we're still staying like upbeat. Okay. And it's heavy mostly because it's like whoosh, like a very brain opening. But what I love about it is like just using the energy of this day. Like I was gonna do a live stream yesterday for 4/11/4 and decided that I was just gonna use yesterday as like this portal instead to get all this information for you and then be able to like lay it on you today. So I want to just make sure that, because I've been kind of jumping around, I want to make sure I'm hitting all my points in my notes. So hold on one second. Okay, so as I said, like JC, He was a radical guy, okay? He was a heretic through and through. He spoke up against the Romans multiple times. He challenged the status quo. He challenged the money. He challenged the way that people thought about each other and being able to give to each other and the ability to turn water into wine, being a living philosopher's stone, reaching that level of magical logos of your own that you're able to change, 3 fish and 5 loaves of bread to feed 1,000 people. This is really all parables to say that we have access to untapped resources, but we're too busy looking around searching for the kingdom of heaven when really the kingdom of heaven is within us all. As soon as we know ourselves as the Christ, we unlock all these millions of potentials. What we run into is that our ego, because of millennia of being told that Jesus, this one dude, is the only person who can be at that level, will not fucking let us go there. We have to experience an ego death. This is why I say the resurrection of you. Your ego is trying to keep you at homeostasis. Your ego, actually, if you've not done a lot of inner work, is where you are by when you were aged 7. 7 to 8 is when the ego has fully formed. So all of your habits for safety, all of your ways of knowing whether you're here to survive or thrive, all of your understanding of your worthiness from the external point of view, all of those things are established as the base of your personality by the time you're 7 years old. And unless you have done inner work, gone to a therapist, gone to a psychologist, psychiatrist. I feel like there's people who are therapists who aren't that, whatever. Had a really good life coach mentor, a metaphysical mentor. Maybe you spent some years at a monastery, who knows what people do. But you know what I mean? You go through your childhood, you start dealing with the wounds, you start dealing with your patterns, people in your life start clearing out. And when you read any New Age spiritual book, what are they saying? You're raising the frequency of your thoughts, right? But again, we reach this cap where we're okay, I guess this is just as good as it's going to get because we have been taught that it's heretical and just blasphemous for us to call ourselves Christ, for us to call ourselves God, right? And yet we can say it in yoga class. And it's that's what I mean by a lot of us get stuck in this understanding, we're book smart about it, but we're not street smart about it, right? We can talk the talk, but we can't walk it. And that's what JC was able to do. He was able to embody in a human body the mind of God, the vastness of understanding that we are just existing at whatever frequency we're projecting. So if we're constantly projecting lack and we're constantly projecting stress and we're constantly projecting drama and we're constantly projecting victimhood, then we're going to constantly see that because we're just shooting out a movie and letting it play back at us through our thoughts. Again, Napoleon Hill talks about it constantly. Thoughts are things. It's the very foundation of his book, Think and Grow Rich, which is still to this day, alongside the Bible, one of the top 5 most sold books in the whole world. Right up there also, Harry Potter. So if you read Think and Grow Rich and Harry Potter and the Bible, you've now read 3 of the 5 most sold books ever printed ever. And those are 3 more books than a whole lot of other people are going to read. Well, I guess the whole Harry Potter series would make it 8 books or 9 books, but whatever. Sorry, in my hair. That's what happens on fluffy hair day. Okay. Political heretics. Does anybody have any questions right now? Give you all, I know there's a 30-second delay, so I'll give you all a second. All right. So, if we are all, why do I feel like I'm missing things? Hold on, please. Okay. So I want to make sure I can see you guys popping on. I want to make sure I can see the comments. So we have to align ourselves to this truth. Okay, we have the way that we align ourselves to the truth. I already put the mantra up earlier. I know who I am in truth, and I know what I am in form, and I know how I serve in love. And that's really like the formula for knowing your worth. And again, what is our worth? Our worth is simply that we are all God manifest in human form. So we can create anything we want. We can, our whole life is, we are our own genie, okay? The Christ frequency within us is our best teacher. It's just that it takes lots of teachers, usually, to get to this level. Even Jesus is literally gone in the New Testament from like age 12 to age 30. So what do you think he was doing during that time? He was traveling all over Egypt and Asia and everywhere that he could go, exploring and learning and being initiated into these ancient mystery schools the way that we are being initiated now, very many of us, through relearning the tarot or having access to the vastness. We have the whole world at our freaking fingertips. Okay, we millennials especially don't tend to, like on the census, I bet you this time, like back in 2010, the census said that it was like a third or a quarter of Americans considered themselves not spiritual, non-religious. I bet you that number's jumped even higher now, because as the age of the internet has continued to grow, we have really found so many of the stories to be true. And it's not just the scholars of religion who know this. Everyday people can be like, that's weird. This story from Asia is really similar to this story from South America, is super similar to the Christ story, is way similar to this Native American story. And we're able to just like, oh, there must have been major events that happened, or oh, there have been multiple souls who have been able to reach this level of enlightenment. But it really is, and why do we call it enlightenment? It really is just knowing when you are in alignment with your whole self. So psychologically, if we go to Carl Jung, when we're able to make our unconscious conscious and no longer feel like fate is running our lives, but we know that we are creating our lives. When we're in that wholeness, we are filled with light. Okay, we're just filled with this knowing of our worth, right? So we're filled with God. That's why we say enlightenment, okay? Because we are all really just light, and light photons can't exist. Quantum physics shows us, and all science shows us right now, that light on one side of the universe exists simultaneously, another photon on the other end of the universe. Remember that projector? That's why I say we're just a fractal, because we're shooting out our projection, but we are also a projection. We are an aspect or a projection of the mind or the all or God in physical human form. That is what we are. And when we can align ourselves to this truth, then we start to have new actions. We start wanting different results. We now recognize that having is evidence of wanting, that what we have, we didn't consciously want. So we start finding ways to bring our unconscious desires to the surface through shadow work, or shadow integration is the most commonly used term. But again, therapists often are doing some sort of shadow work when they're doing childhood reintegration, but they're not going to call it that. That's more of the metaphysical, psychological, Jungian psychological train of thought, and that's the train of thought that I am most versed in. And that's where Napoleon Hill then comes in and says our thoughts are things. Okay, so if our thoughts are things, if our thoughts are our results, what's the missing piece? Where does the resurrection really happen? It happens in our feelings and in our actions. That is what a human meat suit is for. When you are one with God, the best that we can describe it is ecstasy, but there really isn't a feeling. You can't feel anything because you don't have the corporeal body to have the feelings in. And you don't have emotions because there's no dualism. There's no, like, I can tell you that Jesus was a radical, but not in his temperament. It's really just in his teachings, right? He was a very Zen dude. And when we think about Zen people, we think about, like, they're not dualistic. They don't have big outbursts of either extreme joy or extreme pain. They just, like, again, they're in that isness. They just are. They're just being, and they're projecting what it is they want to be. So there's all this fluctuation and up and down and up and down and up and down. So when we are able to recognize what level we're vibrating at, we know based on what we have. I have a whole lot of bills. My whole body's breaking down. I've got anxiety. I've got depression. My kids are total maniacs. I'm totally stressed out. My husband's a jerk, totally dismissive. My house is a mess. All of these things that we have, when we are aligning ourselves to knowing that we are an aspect of God in manifestation, we start to think, well, if I create all of this, why do I have all of this? Like, weird. Why does this exist? And it's, again, that unconscious, that part of you that hasn't come on board, the human experiment. All of the past lives that you've lived are tucked away in that unconscious mind. All of the future lives that you will live are tucked away in that unconscious mind. All of the lessons that you've learned from every existence on every planet are tucked in there. But again, humans have not been taught to access this for millennia at this point. The closest that anyone can really see that anyone was talking about this on a regular basis was ancient Egypt. And that was what, like 5,000, 10,000 years ago at this point. We know that the human brain hasn't changed for 40,000 years, minus about 10,000 years ago when the complex written language began. So once we started writing our language, there was a shift. But before that, when we just had oral communications, our brain hadn't changed in 40,000 years. And now it still hasn't changed another 10,000, but our conscious collective beliefs have changed because, again, we're reading. We read these books, we read the Bible, and we think everything in there was written by someone who knew Jesus. None of those books were written by someone who actually sat at the foot of Jesus Christ when he was here on earth. And if you don't believe me, go read some stuff about Bibles, like the Bible scholars, okay? Don't just read the Bible, like read about the Bible, where it came from. So when we want to change our lives, all we have to do is start looking outside of us for evidence that what we want already exists, okay? This is another way that we can resurrect we have to have an ego death. Remember, what is the death? I'm not talking about you die and you come back in your corporeal body. I'm saying your ego has to die. And you will experience actually many ego deaths. My ego dies on a very regular basis. And yet, I continue to grow and continue to expand, and my light gets brighter, and I become a bigger lighthouse, and my beam of light broadcasts further across the storm and across the ocean for people to be able to find and learn from me, because I know what I'm saying is the truth, because I know who I am, and who I am is what? An aspect of the Creator, a fractal image of God. Just like Jesus Christ, just like you, just like Hitler, and just like Donald Trump. So that brings me to this idea that we really are all the Christ, okay? We are all an aspect of the creator and manifestation. We are all perfect. We are all loved. So we absolutely cannot deny that in another person if we want to radiate if we want to vibrate and radiate Christ frequency, Christ consciousness. Again, just recognizing, okay, I desire this result. All of me is on board with this. I've done my inner work. I've gotten my unconscious on board with my conscious through whatever shadow work makes you the happiest. I personally love existential kink. It's got to be my favorite way to do shadow work. Carolyn, Elliott. Again, I'm going to edit this so that you guys know the names of all these books that I have referenced. And you want to, you get to this level, you're like, okay, so I'm all on board. This is the result that I desire. I desire to have $1 million. Okay. Well, what actions do I need to take to make $1 million? And you could just like brainstorm. Well, I could do this, I could do that, and I could do this, and I could do that. And then you have like a general list. And each one of those are your aims, let's call them. Those are your aims. You're like, that's your to-do list. Check, 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 check. Your goal is to be a millionaire. You don't really like check off. I mean, if it's on your bucket list, you would check it off, but we put it at the end. Like the result I want is to be a millionaire. And a millionaire means having $1 million in cash liquid, not in like hiding in all of your assets. And then the actions that I need to take is build a business or invest this much in the whatever, all the different ways that you could become a millionaire. And then in those, there's going to be like sub actions that you have to kind of take, which you can, those are your aims. So you write your to-do list and you can start breaking down, oh, well, my to-do list is to build a business. But to build a business, I need, and you have more to-do lists, right? And you can be able to, but it's all focused. You have a focal point, right? If you're projecting, it's a lot easier to project like focusing on a screen here than it is to project 360, right? Most of us are all over the freaking place, which is why, again, this time right now is such an amazing time for a massive ego death, because we're not all over the place. And we're not just showing up to Easter Sunday after we haven't gone to church in however long, right? We're having to be with our family constantly, and we're having to be with ourselves constantly. So you want all these things, you want the result, you have these actions. How do you want to feel when you're taking these actions? Do you want to feel like working is hard? Do you want to feel like it's like super laborious? Do you want it to be stifling? Like think about how you feel when you're working right now. Is that how you want to feel while you're becoming a millionaire? Probably not. That's that part, the feeling, the emotion. That's where people get stuck. They know that they need to do the business and clean the house and put the kids in ballet and do all the things, but they're not happy about it. They're not blissful about it. They're not turned on by it. They're not experiencing the feeling that they want to have when they have $1 million too, okay? Because it all aligns. How will you feel when you have $1 million liquid cash is how you want to feel while you're taking the actions that get you that $1 million cash. So what thoughts do you need to have? What words do you need to have in your own mind, your own little human brain, to get yourself to have those feelings? Remember, in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was God. You are God. So what words are you saying to yourself? What are your inner thoughts on a regular basis? I promise you, Jesus Christ did not look in the pond at his reflection and say, oh, I'm so fat. Oh my God, look at this day. I think my robe is too tight. Oh, I do not have enough money. how am I ever going to do any of these things? No. He didn't ever have any of those types of thoughts. His thoughts were all of the highest vibration. And because of that, his feelings were of the highest vibration. And because of that, his actions were of the highest vibration. And because of that, his result of resurrection and being able to project his mind past his physical form is of the highest vibration, which is Christ consciousness. See what happened there? But his circumstances, he was born in a manger. A carpenter and his wife. Had a brother named James a couple of years later. Traveled all over the world. Had this really hot chick named Mary Magdalene, who was really his sugar mama because she came from a whole lot of money. And she helped him fund the whole crazy operation, the whole crazy, radical, underground operation that got him killed because his best friend turned him in to the Romans for 3 pieces of silver. And yet he hung on the cross and said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." As in, I love them anyway, because I know that they are all an aspect of you, of God, which we are, of the Holy Spirit. In Western esoteric traditions, you hear about the holy guardian angel. This is all the same stuff. Oh yeah, he's been to India. He's been all over the place. Oh, you're jumping on a little late. We already talked about all of that, but yes, absolutely, yes. Yao, tell me. Ayao. I hate when I can't pronounce names. Let me know phonetically how to say your name, and I promise I'll say it right. As someone whose name gets mispronounced all the time, Okay, so. We are all the Christ. I just want to go through again that I've gone through. So again, what does changing our life come down to? It really simply and truly comes down to knowing who you are as a divine creator. Okay? To really knowing that you are in complete choice of redirecting your life in this new level of consciousness. Now that you are aware of this, go pick up some of the books once I write them down and you start reading them. Once you start recognizing all these other places where this has been said before, A Course in Miracles, Disappearance of the Universe, the Sophia Code. I mean, really Think and Grow Rich in many ways. Darkside of the Lightchasers. There are so many books out there that talk about, and then neuroscience and quantum science, quantum physics, they're just finally catching up to a lot of these occult traditions. They're able to prove it in the materialistic sciences. But Hermetic arts predates written language. And logos, which means word, which was God, which was Jesus. Logos has a Latin base that goes back thousands of years before Jesus Christ was ever on the earth to mean of all reality. Not just how we learn logos in our English classes, that it's the logical side of an argument in a paper, and that ethos is the emotional side, and that pathos is whatever. No. Logos translated to of all reality. So in the beginning, there was all reality. God already exists everywhere. Again, quantum science tells us that a photon on this side of the universe exists on the other side of the universe. Every day you can pick up a science journal and they talk more and more about the infinite galaxy stars in our galaxy, and the infinite galaxies in the universe, and the infinite universes within the multiverse. And that all is still God, or in the Kabbalion, the all. What do I mean by logos? Logos is the Latin word for word. So in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, is from the Gospel of John. And they're referring to Jesus Christ as God, as this infinite creation. But again, the word doesn't exist until you write it down, right? We didn't really even have a concept of what words were when we would just tell these oral stories. And it wasn't until about 10,000 years ago that we started actually writing things. Okay, so we are all being given this sacred pause. If you like the cocoon analogy, great. It's Easter, so I'm going to go to the tomb analogy. We all have been marred and beaten and stones thrown at us, crown of thorns put on our head. We have all beaten ourselves up to an unimaginable degree. We have thought the worst thoughts about ourselves and about our friends and about our family and about the world and about our leaders. And yet this current situation is non-discriminatory. It's not hitting one population more than any other, except for those who are in a socioeconomic stance that is making it so they don't have access to healthcare. But that's still not really, it's not choosing who to infect by any means, right? It's a global pandemic. And we are all inside of our tomb right now. Our egos are having a huge death. Who are we as parents? Who are we as couples? Who are we as siblings? Who are you when you don't have all of your relations out there to distract you, and when you do have all your relations right up in front of you that you normally are distracted from? Who are you when you're by yourself in the shower? And now that you can't go put on a mask and pretend to be someone else, and you're constantly just surrounded by the current situation of your life, your current circumstances, how much longer are you going to continue thinking the thoughts that you have the way that you're thinking them and assuming that your results are going to change? That's the definition of insanity. No wonder people are going freaking loco. And here in America, we still got about 60 days or more of this social distancing, stay at home, shelter in place stuff. At least. We have no idea. We literally have no idea. Just like no one had any idea how long Jesus's body was going to be in that tomb. I'm sure they thought forever. And right now it feels like we're going to be in our houses forever. So are we going to continue again to just think the same thoughts that we were thinking before, or worse, and spiral downwards and just get even more stuck in the cacophony of low vibration and low frequency? Divorce rates are skyrocketing right now. Domestic violence rates are skyrocketing right now. There is so much travesty and so much suffering and so much pain happening because such a small population of the planet has been given access to what you just were given for the last hour. And what a teeny tiny fraction of the population really actually knows in their bones. There is a good amount of people that consider themselves light workers or conscious workers or mindful or any of those things, spiritual gurus, that understand it on a very mental, like teachy way. but they don't know it deep in the depths of their bones, right? They don't know that they are really and truly completely worthy of every single desire that they could ever dream. And all they need to do is consciously raise the vibration of their unconscious thoughts to the level of consciousness. That's it. And without judgment. You don't need to judge those thoughts because you are whole, right? There's non-dualism. So that means as much as you like to play in the light, you have an equal and opposite reaction that loves to play in the dark, in the shadows, who loves the lack, who loves the scarcity, who loves the pain, because you cannot experience pleasure without pain. That is what I mean by the Christ wants to experience as you. Because you can go down to these depths and then also rise so high and go and look at your life story and be like, holy shit, that's where I was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was pregnant with my third baby, had pregnancy depression, had a super needy 2-year-old toddler who was just a holy terror, who like literally an asshole. I had a third grader who was so anxious and so depressed. He was ahead in all of his classes, but was constantly getting in trouble for bad behavior. My marriage was constantly rocky. My finances were absolute shit. We were constantly overdrawing from the bank, didn't know where the food was going to come from. And here I am 3 years later, and I have experienced death after death after death, and resurrection after resurrection after resurrection. And I will continue to rise, and I will continue to preach, and I will continue to teach, because I truly and totally, in every fiber of my being, know who I am as a fractal of God. And I know what I am as a God in manifestation of form. And I know how I serve is by speaking and singing this song of love, that I love you, and I know exactly who you are too. And I know exactly what you are, and I know exactly how you serve, because we are all the same. We are all whole. We are all perfect. We are all complete. We all have the capacity to live a life of a constant stream of miracles. We all have a capacity to live knowing the fullness of this reality and beyond. So I'm going to leave you all today with thank you for all the hearts and likes and loves. Thank you. With this thought, if you want to change your current circumstances and you want different results in your life, what do you want to feel when you have those results? How do you want to feel in form when you have those results? And how do you want to feel while you're taking the actions to get those results? And what thoughts will you need to get those feelings? Because when you start having thoughts that are of the highest vibration, and you start having those feelings of joy and of bliss and of curiosity and compassion and grace, then you're able to take actions that will lead you to prosperity, to bounty, to limitless power. We have unlimited, untapped resources. Simply because we are too low, we're trying to reach above the clouds, but we're thinking thoughts down here. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson often says, I never understand why NASA still calculates the power of rockets and horsepowers, because no matter how many horses you hook up to each other, they are never going to go up in the air, right? They're never going to go up into space. And I love that, because that's what's been happening. We have been sitting in this horse and buggy mentality for centuries and centuries and centuries. But very much in the last century, with the public school system and a lot of the stuff that's really being disintegrated right now as it's being brought to light. But we are now in this age, this new golden age of miracles, where miracles really happen constantly, because we're consciously creating a reality. We're consciously thinking about what it is that we want and how we want to feel when we get there, and we're staying in that vibration. And that is living as Jesus Christ lived. He was so blissful because he was doing what he loved. He had his purpose, his divine mission, which was to show you how to live truth. So keep your word to yourself. If you say that you're going to do something, then do it. Don't lie. Don't fall into the world of illusion anymore. And if you need any support with that, well, that's why you hire a mentor. That's why you get the help that you need. That's why I have a business teaching people how to know their worth. And I hope that now that you've watched this, you now understand exactly what I mean when I say that. So let me read the comments. Instagram, I'm going to let you go because you're going to be turning off in a second anyway. Thank you so much. Goodbye. And Facebook, happy Easter, Kim. Yes, Jordan, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, there we go. We are done. I think that's all we're going to do today. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Happy Easter. Let me know if there's any way that I can serve you. I have my bespoke dragon invocations that I do. I have one-on-one mentoring. There is also the leadership group that I lead for helping more leaders be able to speak this to anything from your city council to being governor to being the CEO of Fortune 100 companies, everywhere in between, leaders of industry. That is who we really need to be setting the example of what it means to know your worth, because the worth isn't about the dollar sign. It's about loving the isness, the frequency, the singing crystal that is you. And as always, I love you. Have a beautiful day. Happy Easter.